Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts and doing another new episode on how to really self-care right now. And I'm on a mission to help you understand what is staying healthy. And so I found another person on the same mission as myself on Facebook, and I asked Dr. Stephen on my show today to explain kind of what he did. So thank you for coming on, kind of last minute request, and share this valuable information with our listeners and the world.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Well, let's start with like who you are and, what's your why, what's your drive, and what you're trying to do in our community.
Sure. Well, my history is that I got my pre-med from Western Michigan University back in the day. I got a doctorate in chiropractic. I'm Board Certified Clinical Nutritionist. I'm a member of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. I'm a member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. I'm an IFM member. So this is my passion, is to identify what the underlying causes of any illness is, because there's always a cause. And that really is in my office. I have an integrative office. We have medical and we have natural healing. And I think there's a place for both, but my mission is always to identify why would we need a medical approach? What's going on in your body that's making the challenges that we would need to intervene with the medicine in the first place?
Yeah, I'm always on that question is why. If people want to have a quick response, put a Band-Aid on it, not just look at why is this happening, what's this related to, and kind of peel the layers off to get to the root causes, because there's usually more than one thing, because everything is connected and gets imbalanced if something is off. So what have you found is we are, where are you based out of again? I saw you're
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
So
Yes.
Are you on lockdown there, staying at home?
There is some of that going on for sure. My office is open. We're actually pretty busy. We're an essential care office. Since we have this integrative approach, we're still seeing patients. Of course, we're taking all the precautions necessary to make it safe. Mm-hmm. Every patient that comes in, we're checking their temperature and we're doing vitals to make sure that there isn't any challenges going on with any of this epidemic or pandemic issues. But patients still need to be taken care of. And if we can take the burden off the hospital system, we're going to do it.
What can you do if someone comes in and does have a higher temperature and isn't feeling quite well and having some of the symptoms?
Yes. So we definitely will screen them, but we also can do telemedicine. And so we get more details from the telemedicine standpoint. If we have to prescribe some nutrition, if there's a medication involved, we'll do that. Or if we have a major concern and all the alarm bells are going off for this COVID-19, then we're going to send them to the hospital.
Yeah, it seems, I keep reading a lot of posts, and even a health client I have is that people wonder if they had COVID-19 before it was actually known what it is in January, February, before it came in this pandemic. But just the signs and symptoms, what do you find that people might be struggling with that could be the COVID? And because testing is so limited, what's your experience so far?
Well, we're going to have the flu anyways. That's a major part of our society around the world. So it is hard to differentiate, because the portion of the population that can handle this exposure to the COVID-19 virus oftentimes don't have more than a sniffle or a little cough, and they just manage it and get throughout the day. So it is very difficult to differentiate that from the normal traditional flu. The kicker is the portion of the population that might have these degenerative conditions that we're really worried about, whether it's heart disease, diabetes, immune compromised, overweight. Those are the ones that can have the significant symptoms. And if they had those symptoms, they would know it.
Yeah, I find there's a lot of people that have previous conditions, and people that smoke too, just people that haven't taken care of themselves, they're more at risk. But I think what I've become aware of the last month or so is that how many people are not aware of what health means, and the being fit and healthy. If they look good on the outside, but they're not really fit and healthy on the inside. And that we have these, as an FDN practitioner, we identify, those hidden internal stressors that are causing dysfunction. But I would think a lot of people might look good on the outside, but they think they're invincible, but really, their gut is, if our immune system is 80% our gut, how important is gut health, and looking at how healthy am I on the inside out?
Yeah, we always want to look at from that perspective. 3 major triggers that cultivate immune responsiveness that's inappropriate, even autoimmunity. One is, and this is what I learned at a young age, is you'll have a genetic predisposition. And so what I was taught at a young age was, if you have the genes, you're going to have disease. That's completely inaccurate. If you have the genes and you activate those genes, then you'll elicit what we call the disease response. So we have the genetic predispositions, then we have the environmental triggers that are involved. A food trigger, a chemical trigger, or a pathogen trigger. A pathogen trigger could be a virus, a parasite, a bacteria, or a fungus. And then we have exactly what you just said, leaky gut or hyperpermeable bowel. This sets up the storm of chronic degenerative disease and autoimmunity in America. And these are the patients that we're seeing need the hospitalizations and need the respirators and need that emergency care, because their immune systems are so already hyperactive and inflamed that they can't mount a healthy response to a new virus.
And that's why I feel like I'm on this personal mission to help create this awareness, is what you're saying, because I am an athlete. I work out all the time. I did racing for years before I got broken, but I know my labs I just did, they're not ideal. I have H. pylori, I just found out, still hiding in there. I have probably leaky gut. I didn't do that. I have liver congestion, oxidative stress, and all this stuff. So just because I'm, fit and strong, I don't feel like my immune system is as strong as it could be. So if we want to optimize our health, build our immunity, build our resiliency, we need to really be doing this self-care practice, and how we can, if we get someone around us that has the virus, how can we protect and build our defense system up?
Well, it's funny that you mention it in that way, because I was watching the news, and it was my favorite news channel. It's like a business news channel. And they were interviewing the CEO of Nestle. And they were congratulating him for increasing hours and manufacturing more snacks and chocolates. And it's bizarre. It's actually, this is accepted by society as normal. If you go to the grocery stores right now, you'll see all the snacks, all the unhealthy foods are gone. Yeah. They're purchased. Now, we know that these foods sabotage the immune system. So what we should be doing are things like getting good sleep, hydrating with clean water, not city water, making sure we're exercising, reducing that total inflammatory burden in the body from staying away from food sensitivities, getting rid of that H. pylori that is very difficult when you don't address it. It can antagonize the gut, balancing out fungus. Those variables need to be addressed. And then when those are addressed, you're empowered. You don't have to be the one that's concerned or fragile about, what if I get this? What if I get this? When I was growing up, I was on antibiotics quite a bit, and that was traditional back in the day. If you got sick, my mom took me to the doctor, I got an antibiotic. And I started to think that I'd never be able to get through a winter without an antibiotic. And that was concerning. And once I started this approach in my early 20s, this we called it back then environmental medicine. The terms now are more functional medicine. I haven't been on an antibiotic in 30 years, and my patients cough on me all the time. That's the power of this approach. I am not intimidated by the coronavirus. Now, I don't want to have exposure, but most of us will have exposure. If we have a healthy immune system, we have some symptoms and we navigate it. If we don't, they're the ones that get sick and have this concern.
So if we want to take responsibility for our own health, self-care, what do we do? I know you talked a lot already, some tips, but you have great videos you posted on Facebook. Let's talk about kind of some basic steps of how to really optimize our health, which I would think would be our gut health. And I love to run functional lab testing, really identify those internal stressors. So ideally, I would suggest running the labs, but if people can't do that, what are some just lifestyle habits we can do that are free?
Sure. So the first thing we do to try to maintain a healthy gut lining, gut integrity, reduce that hyperpermeable bowel, take out the dairy and get rid of the wheat. It's just a given.
Yeah.
It's free. It's something that you can do with just a little bit of energy. You can work with your functional care practitioner like yourself. And we do lab tests in the office as well if you need that. But if you're trying to minimize in this kind of lockdown situation, just get rid of the dairy because it has an antagonistic protein that tears up the gut wall and actually activates the immune system for attack against yourself, called molecular mimicry and autoimmunity. The gluten can do the same thing. You take those variables out of the equation and you're reducing that fragility. Now, of course, we always talk about sugar too. Got to get the sugar out. You have to get it down because it antagonizes everything going on in your body. It's an oxidative stressor. It suppresses your white blood cells, and we have way too much sugar.
And what about mitochondria function? Are you familiar with, mitochondria, how they get damaged from the chronic stress, from the inflammatory foods? How's that connected?
Exactly. So, and I think you were alluding to this, is when we identify the triggers that we're exposed to, we reduce inflammation. Mm-hmm. And that takes some of the stress off the mitochondria. So the mitochondria, there's 5,000 of these little guys on an average per cell, and they make your energy. Without your energy, you don't repair and heal. What can sabotage that? An inflammatory cascade from a food. A chemical can damage it. A pathogen can damage it. Your emotional stress can create this inflammatory cortisol response that can sabotage it. So those things always have to be incorporated into a healthy lifestyle if you're going to maximize your mitochondrial function. One of the things with, if you're familiar with statin drugs, mm-hmm. yeah, statin drugs are, well, they're a poison that poisons the liver, so it can't make cholesterol. So one of those mechanisms is it shuts down the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. It shuts it down. And so if you don't have that working, you don't make energy. And if you don't make energy, you don't repair and heal. So the whole idea is to have the energy to repair and heal. And if you're taking a statin drug, we're very, very concerned with your capability to resist stress and to have the energy. So it's so important. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a big deal to have a healthy mitochondria.
Well, I've finished the book by Dr. Lee No on the mitochondria function. I need to go back and read it again because every time I finish a book, I'm like, I got to go back and start that over again because there's so much information and stuff. Yes. But it's fascinating to me, and diving into the mitochondria and how they're connected to everything. Because I started years ago studying chronic stress because what happened to me in adrenal exhaustion, and how it's not really HPA axis dysfunction, but just really trying to share with everyone how chronic external and hidden internal stressors contribute to a whole domino effect, a cascade of events in your body systems and all this breakdown, which is correlated to what you're just saying, is that the mitochondria function and how that's related. So really kind of talking about how chronic stress impacts gut health and mitochondria and just being healthy.
Absolutely. Exogenous stressors like chemicals in the environment, and endogenous stressors, which are our own chemicals, which we make when we have the perception of stress. Your immune system, if you have the perception of stress going on, your immune system can't be working. It has to, as the stress goes up in your life, the immune system goes down. It's not a good relationship. Yeah. We don't want that stress.
So what are you suggesting with your viewers, your followers, and your clients? What actions should we do now? So like we talked about nutrition, sugar, gluten, avoid dairy,
yes,
other inflammatory foods like soy, peanuts, corns on there usually.
Yeah.
Vegetable oil, canola oil. The vegetable oils seem to be a big thing, but getting rid of the processed foods and focus on nutrient dense whole foods.
Yes.
Like and more protein, grass-fed meats and stuff like that. Are you saying anything to do with intermittent fasting to let the body heal and repair longer duration, and more low carb, keto, carnivore, paleo? What's your take on the nutrition part of it?
Yes, we actually do in my office for those diet approaches. We have a keto approach for the patients who need it. Some patients need it. Mm-hmm. We have a medical HCG approach when we need that. Just depends on your body, your physiology, the damage that's been done the mechanisms that work. Of course, we love the paleo. That's a happy medium with a lot of these. And then after the patients have been working with us for about a year or so, we have that conversation about Mediterranean. You get a more diverse diet in, you get to have a little bit of fun, but it's still a healthy approach. But some of these we don't want to start unless we've healed that gut. If the gut's not healed, you're going to be very vulnerable to antagonists, food antagonists, pathogen antagonists, and even some of these casual compounds that we come into contact with. We have to be very cautious.
It's hard to heal a gut if you keep eating foods that you're reactive to, though, right? So if you're eating foods like gluten and dairy, or even healthy foods that you're tested that are your sensitive foods, it's hard to heal your gut at the same time if you keep putting poison in it.
It won't heal.
Yeah.
It won't. It's a nice, I mean, I have a wall of nutritional supplements in my office, and I love them all, but I could take them all and I'd still have leaky gut if I wasn't killing those pathogens, that infection, if I wasn't avoiding those antagonistic foods. Well, one of my mentors early on in my career said, if you have 5 nails in the bottom of your foot and you only take out 1, does it still hurt when you walk?
That's a good one.
Yeah, you got to take out those nails, the foods, the chemicals, the pathogens, the heavy metals, the emotional stressors.
It's a lot of work.
Deficiencies. Yes.
But see, that's overwhelming to people. They want the magic pill. They want just like, give me that vaccine, give me that pill that's going to fix me and make me have this armor around my body that I won't get coronavirus or any disease.
Well, I'm still looking for that. And I don't think it's out there. I do think there's some really neat things that we can implement. I know that we're doing stem cell type of therapies, exosomes in the office, and we're doing peptide therapies. So we're on the front line of the latest advances that are safe and supportive. But even with those technologies, we still have to adhere to the basics. If you're reacting to wheat and you're bringing it every day because you think that you're taking the vitamins and they'll heal you, it's not going to work. You got to get off that wheat.
Yeah. Do you do food sensitivity panels with people, or just have them do a just reactive food sensitivity test themselves, like with their heart rate going up or blood sugar going up?
Every patient, I've seen over 10,000 patients. Every patient gets a dysbiosis, an organic acids test to check for that imbalance of fungus, parasites, bacteria in the gut. Everybody gets a nutrition check and everybody gets a foods check, because those are the basics. And if we're not adhering to those basic rules, all we're doing is slowing down the healing process if we can even get to that desired place, which is optimal health.
I keep saying that every day. People need to invest. If they want to get healthy, you don't know what you don't know. You have to test and stop guessing, because I had no idea I still had H. pylori, and I had it detected 8 years ago in blastohominus. I had no idea. I don't have symptoms, but I have fatigue. I can't run, I can't lose weight. It was slow recovery and just all these different things, but you can't just run one lab as you do too, right? You have to see the correlation. And that's why we say at FDN is kind of an investigation, putting the missing pieces of the puzzle together, because I also had, high levels of oxidative stress, which I correlate with mitochondria and fatigue running and not be able to get my endurance back up. And so there's all these things that people just think are, it's part of aging. That's just how it is. That's how I am. And like you said, genetics, it's, epigenetics is controllable. So it's really empowering to know you too, that we have to run these functional lab tests and spend that money. If it's, $500, $1,000 on labs, but you're wasting your time a lot just in what we say in the cycle of trial and error, trying to figure out what should I do when you said, if you take one nail out, you have 4 others still there, you're still going to have problems.
Exactly. Your health is the best investment there is. I can't imagine doing anything else that's more important than identifying those underlying triggers that are specific for you.
I know I just meeting with the Dutch test. Do you ever do the Dutch hormone panel?
Sure.
I have a podcast with them on Friday, and I'm so wanting to share people this stress, chronic stress impacts all of this. And so if you have, the low hormones, you have the parasite gut, you have the food sensitive panel, the oxidative stressors, organic acids, you need to run all those to really look at it. But just how you look at a hormone panel by itself, you don't know the why, as we started with the show. It's like, why are my hormones totally low? My DHA, my cortisol's low, my estrogens are all low. And I had someone reach out, they're like, I'm having these hormone problems, but they just did the regular test with their doctor, but they don't look at the whole picture. So it's so frustrating, isn't it, to know it's like, I want to help you, but you're not getting the whole picture.
Well, what we do in the office is we'll do the hormone panel and we'll go ahead and prescribe bioidentical hormones if we need to. Yeah. But all that is a wonderful patch until we figure Band-Aid. Out, how do you get the body back online? Because our vision is with every patient, we'll use this Band-Aid and a healthy Band-Aid until we can get your body back to the restoration where it makes its own hormones the way it's supposed to. And with that vision, we just watch it. And as you start to heal, the intervention with bioidenticals go down.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, so the next thing, I'm just going through my holistic method, is 8 elements. So we talk about nutrition, exercise. So what do you find with exercise for people trying to build health, immunity, resiliency, and avoid, getting the coronavirus?
Yes. First of all, it's a given. It's back when I played sports my whole life, but when I graduated from high school, I was like, finally, I don't have to go work out. I don't have to exercise. I don't want to do anything. I was exhausted with hockey and soccer. Mm-hmm. And as I took that approach, my wisdom wasn't there. And I realized that exercise needs to be a part of my life. It's the most important antidepressant, most effective antidepressant there is. Yep. It oxygenates your tissues. It oxygenates your brain. Everybody needs to exercise every day. It's not an option if I don't feel like it. You always feel better after you exercise. So it's a daily thing, and we should embrace it.
Yeah. But then you're talking to a lot of my listeners were type A, AAA athletes who do Ironmans and marathons that do way too much. So I call it the Goldilocks effect. Not too much, not too little, just that right amount that's not going to cause additional chronic stress. And in a time of this pandemic, people are, stressed out watching too much news and social media posts and just too much going on. What is your opinion on exercise that's healthy for us and how too much exercise could raise our cortisol levels and have excess chronic stress?
Agreed. So we want to get the exercise in that's effective. We want to get a sweat in. We want to be reasonable. And if for those high performance athletes, if we just can't get that mindset of being reasonable, then we bolster the body to deal with that stress. I often tell my patients, I don't want you to quit your job because of stress. I want to make your body so healthy you can handle any stress that comes down the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So we just bolster those high performance athletes with the right nutrition, with reducing inflammation, whether we need to sleep a little extra, whether we need to take some extra nutrition, whether we need to meditate, yoga, prayer, church, doesn't matter, whatever you can do to downregulate those stressful inflammatory responses so that way we can cultivate a stronger, healthier body.
For sure. And that goes into my next element of the holistic method is sleep. And I just talked to Dr. Bruce about sleep, the sleep doctor. We did a great episode on sleep. But what's your findings with people, how immune system and stress and sleep's connected?
So when I was getting my doctorate, it was a badge of honor to sleep 3 hours a night because that meant that you were studying more and you knew more than anybody else because you didn't sleep. Now, I know that's just ridiculous now. That was probably the worst choice I could have made. And we actually have to get 7.5 hours of sleep, quality sleep, every night. That's not tumbling and turning on, picking up your cell phone and checking what's going on. You want to get to bed before 10 o'clock if possible because your body has a circadian rhythm and certain organs charge at certain times. And you want to have that completely pitch black in your bedroom because the minute you get some light in that bedroom, it shuts down the pineal gland. And that's a very important gland in the center of the brain. That pineal gland makes melatonin. Melatonin is known. Well, we think, you probably heard with this coronavirus that a lot of the younger population isn't so susceptible. We think that's because the younger population, our kids, make so much melatonin, it down-regulates that inflammatory response in the lungs, that exaggerated response, and so they get through it without having any issue. As we get older, we make less melatonin in our pineal gland, and so we have less of that resilience because that melatonin is an antioxidant, it's anti-cancer. There's so many wonderful properties, and as we get older, we don't make it like we should just because of the 21st century. 21st century, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, fertilizers, growth hormones, antibiotics, steroids, genetically modified foods. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And what about melatonin's also made in your gut wall lining, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So if you have low melatonin, that's probably a symptom or a clue that you have another clue towards gut dysfunction.
Everybody has gut dysfunction.
Yeah, I know. That's what I keep saying.
Everybody's got it. The idea, what I try to do in my office, I tell my patients, I'm here to identify how leaky you are. Everybody's leaking.
Yeah.
I need to know how leaky are you?
Yeah. What tests do you do for leaky gut tests?
Yeah. Well, we used to do some of the sugar tests to see what sugar gets to the bowel wall. We really don't do that. We rely mostly now on the organic acids test. It can really give us good information about how much the fungus is making a byproduct, and we can measure that byproduct in the urine. If there's C. diff, if there's Clostridium species making byproducts, because they're alive, and if they're alive, they have exhaust, and their exhaust is a poison. We can measure that poison in your urine, and then we can indicate your level of infection.
Yeah, I know. I have that test, actually, the Great Plains organic acids test to take. Yeah. So on the next element is stress. So how does stress impact our immune system?
Yeah. So if you think about our ancestors, and I like to go back to our ancestors because their physiologies function the way they're supposed to. Ours are going offline now because of the 21st century.
Yeah.
Our ancestors, what they do is they'd have a stressful experience, like they'd have a tiger chasing them on a hunt. Their immune system would turn off, their digestion would turn off, and all their energy would go into the musculature to get away from that tiger. They climb a tree, the tiger would go away, they get to relax, they go back to their camp, their family. They start to recover, they start to heal, they're nourished by their loved ones. Then maybe a week and a half later, they have another experience running from a tiger.
Yeah.
That's the normal response. Today, everybody's waking up, watching the TV, worried about this COVID-19, worried about this pandemic, worried about our finances, our food, our money, you name it. That taxes, that subconscious stress taxes the body every second of the day, and your body has to respond to that subconscious stress. So it makes these inflammatory hormones. So instead of having this great maintenance and healing going on in your body because your stress is low, when we have that perception of stress that goes high, that healing and maintenance turns off, and you go into this innate response called fight and flight. We're not supposed to live in fight and flight. So when we get exhausted from always being in fight and flight, what do? Coffee and sugar.
Yep. And alcohol too now.
Yes. Drive our bodies in the ground whether it wants to go there or not.
True. I mean, that's what I've been trying to write and explain. It gets too sciencey for people, but Secretary IgA and how importance of that, how stress is on, your immune system's down, but how is exactly off? And it relates to, it's just crazy how the body works, just how it protects yourself in emergency. So it turns everything else off. And that's kind of your immune. I was thinking of your army and your gut, your defense, first line of defense is kind of on hold, and they're not functioning as optimally as they should if you have too much nonstop stress.
It's about allocating resources. Our ancestors are here. We're here now because they did a great job of allocating resources. You can't always have one resource on because it created deficiency in another resource. So we're always maneuvering every day. What's going here? What's going on there? Do we need extra here? Do we need extra there? When we start to lose that flexibility and we become inflexible with that is when we get sick.
Yes, I know. But that's why I feel like we need to keep explaining how chronic stress is going to lower your immune system. And if you're all about get healthy, stay home and get healthy, it's really defining what healthy means and what we need to do to be healthy, not just walking outside, which is my next element is movement. And I keep telling people, wake up, go outside and see the sunrise. We do my new routine is a little half-hour workout at home or yoga. And then I go outside, sun's coming up, and then I get ready and go to work, come back, feel like I left somewhere because we're stuck at home in Seattle. And then, lunchtime, all right, that means go take a break, go for a walk. Evening time, all right, office is closed at 5, go for a walk, get outside, even if it's 5 minutes. But how important is movement right now and vitamin D, sunlight?
Yes. It's fascinating. In Japan, they actually call part of this forest bathing. Doctors will prescribe to get outside in nature because there's so many qualities in nature that actually we resonate with and support to nourish our body. So when you get outside in the sun, if there's no sun, there's no life. Yeah, and this is what just below, and maybe you feel this way too. Think about the research in the 70s and 80s. They started, the doctors, the research said, don't go out in the sun, it's bad for you. Oh. It's ridiculous. And so then I get patients coming in with all this sunscreen, this toxicity from the sunscreen. They don't ever get any of that radiation into their tissues. It was poor research. And we have to have some sun. Now, what I tell patients is, in the springtime, let's go with the cycles of life. In the springtime, get out there for 20 minutes, get out there for 25 minutes. As we move into summer, increase your exposure, your dosage. Get that golden brown tan if you can in the summertime, because that will increase your vitamin D levels. And if we go into wintertime with high vitamin D levels, we're going to be healthier. As we start to lose the sun in the winter, we start to use up those vitamin D reserves, and then we have to start the whole cycle over again. And especially with this corona issue, we know that vitamin D, if you have healthy levels of vitamin D, it reduces the incidence of having respiratory syndromes across the board. It's especially important right now.
Yeah, vitamin D. So is it like 10,000 a day vitamin D, or like what?
I never prescribe medicinal dosages without taking a lab test to find out what they're coming in with.
Good job. Yes.
I would love to, because it's so important. Yeah. Almost everybody's deficient in it because nobody gets outside like we used to, our ancestors. But in the foods, obviously we don't eat the fish and the foods that have the vitamin D. Yeah. Most of the fish are polluted. So we make sure we have a healthy start with our vitamin D levels, and then we monitor. We give injections in the office. We recommend supplementation. We have light therapy beds. Anything we can do to get that vitamin D up, because a lot of people are resistant to manufacturing vitamin D. They have a VDR SNP. And with that VDR SNP, you are not going to have high levels of vitamin D. So we need to encourage that to happen.
I know. I did a great podcast with Dr. Ben Lynch, who wrote Dirty Genes, if you've ever read that.
Yes,
so we did
wonderful.
an amazing book, and his program, the software, the Strategene, I suggest people uploading their raw data, and they have a new version coming out in a month. But the VDR is one of my SNPs, and the GTX, which is glutathione, which is something else, really to look at doing for liver health, and our antioxidants is getting that extra glutathione. But you don't know unless, again, you test and look at genetics, because you're just guessing. It's just, that's what we do, is getting that specific information for an individual's needs. Yeah. So the next one is a big factor, digestion. We've talked a little bit, but I keep saying it's what you eat, how you eat. So chewing your food, being in parasympathetic nervous system, sitting, relaxing, focusing, not doing 50 things at once. And when you eat, so intermittent fasting, most of us, and how or why. For proper digestion, I think a lot of those factors, just how we eat, is important for proper digestive processes. So what's your input on digestion and health and immune health?
So I think those were great suggestions you already covered. We definitely want to masticate our food, and we want to chew it up really good. And again, I learned a lot from growing up with friends in college and such, and I would see them inhale a hamburger in 30 seconds. And I'm like, that can't be good. And it isn't. You need to break up those molecules, those proteins. You have to break them up into smaller components to prepare them for digestion. So you want to chew your food super good. You obviously don't want to eat when you're stressed. That's sending the wrong signal. Your brain and your vagus nerve they're always having this conversation. And so you don't want to eat when you're stressed. Look for healthy ways to relieve that stress that we talked about before. And I do implement digestive enzymes when appropriate, amylase, protease, lipase, hydrochloric acid, because so many of our population, we don't assimilate what we're taking in. And so if we don't assimilate, we can have the best organic diet in the world. If we're not assimilating those nutrients and dragging them into our cells, they're just going to go right through, and we'll never capture that value.
Well, that's what I say. It's you eat, even if you eat real good nutrient dense food that's local and organic and everything we want. But if you're not able to break it down and absorb it into your gut wall lining, that's probably damaged and has leaks in it, as we said, you're not getting that nutrition. So you always have to work on, we in nutritional therapy work north, talking about, the parasympathetic nervous system and sitting and focusing and chewing your food, but getting the proper stomach acidity levels and getting the proper digestive enzymes is so essential. But then you got to be able to have the right gut terrain to break it down and absorb it into the body. So it's just amazing, because that's what I did for years. I'm like, I eat healthy, I do this, I do that, I do that, but you know, what's going on inside, it doesn't matter unless you look at that.
And oftentimes when we look at that terrain and the things that we've talked about, whether it's fungus overgrowth or food sensitivities, when you fix that, oftentimes we can take patients off the digestive enzymes or hydrochloric acid because it's just not needed, because our vision is always to get the tummy back to where it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to assimilate and digest. And when we take those variables out of the equation, it will do it. But in the beginning, we have to add our natural Band-Aids. Sometimes we have to do artificial Band-Aids, but we always have the vision in mind that we can get the gut back online, maybe not 100%, but definitely better than it was when you came in, for sure.
So do you find people don't need digestive enzymes once you've got their body functioning well and not being in sympathetic dominance?
Absolutely. As a rule, when we do this program, see, I think patients often get concerned because they're like, okay, I've been doing this for a month. Can I go back and have my pizza?
Yeah.
No, the things that brought you into my office are still out there, and I don't want you to return to them. Yeah. We need to work together over time. And as over this time, it could be 3 months, 6 months, years. Every 6 months, every year, you will get stronger than when you started. I often tell my patients, you will actually reduce the aging process. Even if you're getting older, you're going to be healthier than when you were younger because you were so inflamed and toxic when you were younger.
Mm-hmm. I know I've had clients and they, you know, we do their labs and they're just, you know, in the red zone off the chart, and they don't necessarily, not everyone wants to take the supplements and follow the protocol of nutrition and exercise and sleep and rest. And then it's like, okay, you've probably been messed up like this for years and you didn't know it unless you did labs. It's not like suddenly it happened overnight that your liver's in complete congestion, you know, not even in the middle of the chart, but off the charts. And how the leaky gut tests and doing the mannitol and lactulose, those tests be like off the charts. Like, okay, this isn't just 1 month treatment. You have to really make this the new you and your new transformation, your new journey to having these new healthy habits to optimize your health. Because then we go back to our main topic is how to get healthier and be more resilient to avoid getting COVID-19. Well, gut health and what we're eating and all these elements are so crucial. But my thought is, all right, why are so many people dying? Is that an indication of how unhealthy people are? And as you said, our environmental toxins and triggers that cause dysfunction on the inside.
Yes. Well, think about what the stats are. The American Heart Association came out last spring and said that almost 50% of the adult population in America has heart disease. Can you even capture that concept? Almost 50% of the adult population. They came out and said also that almost 40% of our population is overweight or obese. We're already said this is the population that's more vulnerable to the COVID-19.
Yeah.
So it's right there that over 100 million Americans have prediabetes and diabetes. These are all the risk factors for getting sick in today's environment, to have these chronic degenerative. Let me say this. I had a patient they came in last week. They said, Doc, you know, I just got this ache and pain, and sometimes my knee doesn't work well, but other than that, I'm healthy. And I was literally looking right at his history and his list of medications. He's on high blood pressure medication. He was on diabetes medication. And that's not healthy, but our society is so trained to think that that's normal when it isn't. That's a catastrophe going on in our society and our human population. And now we're seeing just how vulnerable that population is because they're the ones who are susceptible to having the viral exposure and not getting through it in a healthy way.
That is so frustrating, isn't it? It's like, this is why I became a health practitioner, became NTP practitioner, FDN. It's like, yes. I was a personal trainer for 25 years. I'm like, this does not do anything for people, training them twice a week when they're not sleeping, they're not doing stuff the rest of the week, they're eating poor foods, or, you know, just all that stuff. And it's so frustrating to know that, listen to all the people that die every day and know that it's because of our lifestyle and what we're eating almost, and just how we've deteriorated our health system on the inside. And why don't they look at those charts of how many people have heart disease, go back and see when that started? Was it when our food pyramid and our industrialization started of having the refined flour and sugars and processed foods and vegetable oils, and telling us to have, you know, as many carbohydrates as you want, because that's the bottom of the food pyramid. You get 6 to 11 servings of that, and fat on the top, you know, limited. So it's just
completely backwards.
Frustrating. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, do you remember the Crisco commercials?
Oh, yes.
What was science telling us? Absolutely. That is, trans fatty acids are outlawed now across the country. And that's all Crisco was, were these hydrogenated fats that would last forever. And I remember my grandmother cooking with Crisco. And I remember I'd go over to my grandparents' house for lunch while I was going to the university, and they'd always have their margarine out because it wouldn't spoil. And I remember in my biochemistry class, I told my grandpa, I said, Grandpa, you really should be having butter. You can metabolize that butter. And I just learned that that's a hydrogenated fat, like axle grease, and you're never going to metabolize it. And it actually contributes to cardiovascular disease. He goes, nope, my doctor told me I need margarine. I'm not going off it.
I know. I'm sure it's an uphill battle for you, and being a doctor in healthcare and trying to help people and not have them be persuaded by the other, you know, traditional medicine and taking a statin drug for prescription drug for any ailment they have. Yeah. But I think a lot of it is the concern of, you know, what we can do to be healthy and how we can improve all this now. And so the last two elements are hydration and then happiness. So hydration, we've learned, you know, 60% of your body's water. We need to get more, you know, fluid in our tissues, hydrate the tissues. What do you say is hydration? Why do we need to drink, as you said, you know, not tap water, but filtered, clean water without the chemicals, and stay hydrated during the day? Because I think a lot of people are forgetting about water right now. They're not in their regular routine of having water in their car at their desk. They're at home and they're drinking, you know, a pot of coffee instead, and then they're having alcohol starting at 4 o'clock.
Well, we got to remember the fundamentals. The fundamentals are life exists. Life exists on Earth because of water, H2O. Now, when we have healthy water brought into our body uses that as a medium of fluid for chemical reactions to move things around. We are floating in a bag of water that has chemical processes going in and activating and deactivating, and we're walking around like that. Now, if we add in chlorine into that medium, if we add in fluoride, if we add in the pharmaceuticals that are running off into our water, into our fish, into our oceans, and our cities cannot detoxify this water. It's too expensive. So we get these and they come right back into us. It creates a toxic environment. When I say toxic, that's a very generic term, but what it does is it overwhelms pathways that we were never meant to have a chlorine pathway. Chlorine kills bacteria in the water. We think that's great. But what's it doing to us when we drink it? We have a microbiome that doesn't like the chlorine either. So we have to have fresh, clean water. I am a proponent, if you've ever heard of structured water, I like it, I dig it. There's some value to that. Yeah. And so we always have to have filtered, structured, we have to have clean sources of water. Now, I like reverse osmosis, something that might be charcoal filtered, even ozonated, which means they're percolating ozone through the water to kill all the microorganisms that oxidizes them. That's a good, clean water source. And we have to take that extra step financially and the energy to do that, because we don't want to skimp on water. This is our medium. We have to have clean water.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just getting in a habit. Like, you know, I have a bottle at my desk and I'm drinking my turmeric tonic tea during the day and my green tea trying to drink during the day too. And then just, you know, have that available and have it ready and just keep hydrated, but not too close to bed, because then you go pee all night.
And you don't want to break your cycle in your sleep.
Yeah. No, and not to eat drink water is a big thing I learned years ago, that I used to go out and have like 5 glasses at a restaurant. You know, they keep coming by and fill your water. I thought I was so healthy because I drink so much water, but didn't realize I was diluting my stomach acids by eating and drinking too much water. True. So contributing to digestive problems by just drinking water, which you think you're being healthy, but it's not. It's funny. So drink before and after you eat, not while you eat, is something that no one taught us growing up.
I agree. You don't want to flush out those digestive capabilities.
Yeah. Okay. My last one for you,
Sure.
and my most favorite, is happiness. Really trying to stress the importance of playing, laughing, being silly, writing a gratitude journal every day. Why is happiness so important to be healthy?
Yeah. I think it's something that's very difficult for our population because of the circumstances that we just spoke of. Change the chemistry in the brain. It alters the chemistry, it downregulates dopamine, it sabotages serotonin. So right off the bat, if we're not going after those underlying foundational concerns, we're going to be more challenged to even be happy. We address those underlying concerns, and it's easier to maintain a level of satiety, of happiness, of motivation. So we get those 5 nails, 6 nails out of the bottom of your foot, and then we focus on getting outside, getting that prescription to be in the forest, getting back to our family. I know that with this, in the evenings, I am talking to my family. I'm talking to my parents. I have my nephews work in my office, in my supplement shop, and I love it. There's connection with people, and I think that it's easy for us to get despondent, disconnected, focused on our cell phone, focused on our Netflix. And it's not that I don't have those, I do, but I really want to have some responsibility with those, because when I know that there's something deep down in my heart when I'm connecting with my family, with my loved ones, even with my staff and my team members in my office, that is more rewarding than the best Netflix show, even though I love the Netflix. And so I always try to find myself gravitating towards those things that are innate in who we are, that we evolved with, and that we are getting away from exponentially with technology.
I think it's as good as you said, point out serotonin and dopamine, and how happiness and depression and anxiety, they're all related to the stress and the sleep and the nutrition, the digestion, and all the exercise and movement. All these elements, what I call the holistic method to work on the whole you to be healthy, they interplay and interact with each other. So if you have poor gut health, or even go backwards, poor protein digestion, you're not going to get the amino acids, you're not going to get the cofactors to make your neurotransmitters. And if you have gut dysbiosis, you have that gut brain connection that gets messed up. So people need to look at happiness isn't just, taking an anti-anxiety pill or antidepressant. It's more to even, just work on your digestion and improve your gut health. You might be happier.
Yes. I remember one of my friends growing up, and I was in my early 20s, and I wasn't feeling so good. That's how I got on this path. But I remember him saying to me, well, why don't you just be happy? Just be happy. And I was so offended by that, because if I could have been happy, I would have. And it was because of the things, all these inflammatory mechanisms that were activated in my body. And I know that when I started to get those under control, to neutralize them, to disintegrate those antagonists, that there was a level of satiety and capability that just started to come naturally. And once I actually started to feel better with the dopamine response, with the creating the serotonin from a healthy gut, then I started to maximize that, and I started to do a lot of reading about what else can I do to add on to this happiness potential, which was create connection, do your meditation, activates the part of your brain that can create chemicals as well through the meditation. And even you've heard of emotional freedom technique, and doing some of these psychoneuroimmunological techniques that can take some of these, what we could say, triggers out of your subconscious. And that is where I maximize my happiness. And I just didn't do it and it's done. It's something that I try to maintain every day, because you can lose it just as quick as you get it.
And I think right now for us that are in the stay at home, and I think, we're recording this April 9th, I think we'll be here through May. And, I just, whatever they say, I always double it, prepare for the more, so it's just easier to deal with. But I think it's really finding purpose, a new sense of purpose each day. And, I've been writing in a gratitude journal each night. I have my 3 things I say I'm grateful for, and then set intentions for the next day. Practicing yoga, something I've neglected for the past 10 years. I've been doing that more. and realized I really have a lot of areas of opportunity, and my yoga practice is so hard.
Way to put
And
it.
just doing some new things, create structure. And I think that's related to happiness, because alternative is depression and sadness. And I think when you kind of feel lost and you're like, okay, I'm at home all day, you have to make the best of it. And having a little more structure to your day and get a new routine that's for 2-3 months. And that's just kind of the new normal for now.
Yes, I remember my doc who taught me a lot of this back in the day. She always would say, be patient, confident, and hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
And every time she'd say that, because I wanted to get through her program and get healthy right now and go back out with my friends and do this and do that. And I was like, am I there yet? Am I there yet? 6 months later, am I there yet? And she'd say the same thing. She'd look at me with just the most unconditional, loving look that you could ever see. And she'd be patient, confident, and hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was mad that she'd say that. But now I know she was right on, and that her words were truth. And so that attitude of gratitude is so important across the board.
I have that like all over my walls, these positive things in it, because I've always found that over the years to work in my own health is adding positivity and create this positive energy, positive vibes in where you are living and seeing things, signs and stuff like that. So you need to make a sign of those words on a poster board. And
I like it. I should. That's a good suggestion for sure.
Yeah. So what was it? I'm going to write that down. So
be patient, confident, and that important one, hopeful.
Hopeful. I think we should I'll make an infographic of that on my Word Swag app and then post that. Because then it's something right now with the COVID-19, you're just like, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. Can we see a light out there? And you do have to be hopeful, and really see that that's going to happen, and give people confidence. And
we'll get through this. I do not doubt this at all. It's just, this is a good learning experience. Exactly. I think of it as a human learning experience.
Yes.
Globally, this is an opportunity for growth. Let's use it for growth.
That's what I keep saying. It is the gift. What is a gift in this horrible pandemic? But it's people wake up. You need to take care of yourself. And it's just, that's my whole point, is like, why is this happening? Is because people are unhealthy. And we wouldn't all have this spreading and people dying if people were actually healthy, but no one really knows what that means because they've been taught by political nutrition for years, and the food pyramid and the medication, the traditional medicine. So that's just like, we wouldn't be as damaged if people didn't have this incorrect information we were taught for so many decades.
It's true. So it's a hard pill to swallow, but in the big picture, if you're looking at this in the big picture, there's no growth without suffering.
Yes.
And so
write that down.
Well, if you have poor health and you're paying attention to it, that's suffering. And that's what motivated me, because I didn't want to be unhealthy. I wanted to be athletic. I wanted to attend my university courses. I wanted to be productive in the community after I graduated. And it motivated me to take care of my health. But I had to suffer with the loss of those potential things. And I wasn't going to give that up. I wanted to participate in life. That was enough suffering for me to start dedicating myself. Actually, I was an engineer at the university. I was working as a civil engineer. And once I started getting a taste of health, I was like, I got to share this with the rest of the world. And I went right into the pre-med program, ended up being a doctor.
Yeah, so awesome. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to ask you questions that I didn't give you any prep work for.
I love it. This is fun.
This is kind of what my focus is, and my purpose and passion, and how to inspire other people. But it's the holistic method that I wrote 5 years ago, and I started working on it 10 years ago now in 2010, that, there's so much more to being healthy than just getting out and exercising each day. So we need to really keep educating everyone. And if our listeners, you guys can spread this message out, this video and audio version. I think there's so many good takeaways in the show today. So I thank you so much. Where can people find you and follow you and get more information?
My website is yourvitalityhc.com. And that's probably the easiest way, is that, of course, we have a Facebook page, Vitality Healthcare. Now believe it or not, I chose Vitality Healthcare. It's probably not a good choice because there's a million of them out there, but ours is in Portage, Michigan. Vitality Healthcare is our Facebook page. And of course, I have a nutrition shop, and that's called Intelligent Nutrition Incorporated.
Perfect.
INC, yeah.
Well, I'll get all those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes so you guys can look below the podcast or the YouTube video and find all the links in there. So thanks so much, and keep doing what you're doing and keep people healthy.
Oh, thanks. And you keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a wonderful job, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.